now have a test that actually can measure the biological shutdown of our DNA, which is correlated linearly with the aging process. And so there are a number of those tests out now, and those tests actually allow us objectively look at the response that a certain medical or supplement or whatever intervention that we're entertaining with the patient can actually look at whether or not it slows or can reverse the progressive shutdown of the DNA. And in actuality, we're using one that's on its third generation now, and it's probably the best one out there. But it is really interesting to see the results of just our optimization program. The 4-pillar program has provided at this juncture an average age reversal of 9 years right now in my hands and with our program.
Welcome to Your Infinite Health. Are you getting older?
Are you feeling it?
How would you like to do that in reverse?
We're your host,
Dr. Tripp
and LeNae.
We've run an integrative medicine practice for 13 years.
Together, we have 60 years of combined experience helping clients.
We've helped tens of thousands achieve success in health and live longer, happier lives.
In this show, we'll cover peer-reviewed and evidence-based integrative approaches to creating the health you've always wanted.
We also share professional experience we see in the field every day.
So if you're ready to feel, look, and live your best life, you're in the right place.
Welcome to Your Infinite Health podcast.
So, hey, Tripp, so I was going to go get some yogurt. I found this brand I really like. It's called Too Good, TWO Good. It's only got 2 grams of net sugar in it. And I pulled it out of the refrigerator, and it's not suffering from outside heat. I don't know what our refrigerator setting is on, but I have froyo here. I had to crack it like creme brulee. It was
Nice.
so icy.
Somebody needs the weather we've been having, that's kind of refreshing.
Well, it is, but I'm not sure I really like the texture of that. It was unexpected. So if somebody could go check the refrigerator settings, that would be great.
Yes, dear.
Hey, I have a joke.
Oh, dear.
Why do spies sleep so well? Don't think too long.
I don't know.
Because they're always under covers.
It's too good.
I know, right? There is this guy that I want to get on the podcast. God, I forgot his name, but he's an ex-CIA agent who teaches people how to apply CIA skills in everyday life, and he looks freaking fit. So I was thinking about putting him on my list of potential guests.
Oh, yeah, that sounds fun.
If anybody knows him, tell him I want him on my show, Your Infinite Health. Speaking of being fit, I wanted to talk about this because was it last week or the week before you were interviewed on the It's NOLA Out to Lunch.
Mm-hmm.
They air their show. They have a podcast, and then the episode airs on their radio, which I think is affiliated with NPR. And when pitched to them to get you on the show, the guy was like, well, what do you do? And I'm like, well, we help people age in reverse. And he's like, I ain't buying it, and we're not a woo-woo show. And I'm like, well, we don't do woo-woo medicine. And so I had to get him on the phone with you so that you could go into the science-y of it all. And so he was convinced that we're legit. And so you were on that show, and it's actually out, listener. Go look it up. It's a great interview. I like the way they do their interviews because you were being interviewed at the same time as Manesh Patel. Manesh Patel, who has a restaurant in New Orleans.
Great stuff, yeah.
Is it Tava? Do you remember?
Tava.
And so the way that the interview went was you were both there. And at first glance, there doesn't really seem to be any connection between you, an age reversal expert, and Manesh, who has a relatively new, I think, restaurant, like brick and mortar for Indian food. like a certain type, like a new approach to Indian. We're going to have to go try his restaurant out.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was really cool. And I don't think I could do what this guy did. So he was asking you a question and you would answer it. And then when you're done answering it, he goes and asks Manesh a question about what Manesh does and his philosophies. And he's bouncing back and forth between the two of you. And I'm just like, I could never, like my brain would fry if I tried to do that.
Uh-huh.
But it was really cool. And I wanted to talk about.
You talk about the conclusion he drew at the end of it. It was really funny.
What was the conclusion?
So it says something to the effect that longevity just gives more time to eat good food.
And that was the tie that brings it together. Yeah, it was a really great experience for me to watch and for you to do. So listener, go look it up. It's NOLA Out to Lunch. And I think that episode is called Southwest by NOLA or something, but go look it up. It's great. And go support Manesh at Tava. Okay, so on that vein, though, I thought you could also here tell the listeners about what you were talking about on that show, which is that you are actually reversing people's age, that you have done it for yourself, that you have the data that shows that is accurate. So can you tell the listeners, and maybe we've touched on this slightly before, I don't think we've gone into it in this much depth, but how old are you on your birth certificate?
68, almost 68 and a half. Yeah.
And how old are your cells?
They're actually 53 years old.
68 to 53.
Right. And that's, I guess, non-compliant participation in my own program over the last 13 years. But I guess that was really surprising to me when I got the result back. And I thought it was quite gratifying, so much so that I'm motivated and have started the other aspects that I wasn't participating in the program.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So kind of go into, how did you do that? For yourself, how did you do that? And let's talk about, how did you reverse your age? How does that work?
So I guess the basic information on aging is the creation of this toxic environment that we create progressively over the years in our bodies, and our bodies respond to that in a couple of ways. But the common pathway at the end of the day is actually in the creation of inflammation, which then consumes our energy sources for the creation of the inflammatory reaction, but at the same time is creating the molecular, biologic, and biochemical responses to shut down the inflammation so that our body just doesn't just shut down because of the inflammation ongoing. And what that does is it consumes a lot of ATP, which takes away substrate from other reactions in our body that need to take place. And those reactions help our end organs maintain the homeostasis in our body. So that equilibrium that's always there, that your kidneys, your liver, your lungs, your heart, all of those things are working together to maintain that equilibrium. And in the absence of that, it creates an environment that is hostile, so to speak, to cellular survival, and creates more citizens-associated secretory phenotype cells, which are called, they're called zombie cells or welfare cells, however you like.
Because they're called that. Because why? Because they take and don't give back.
That's correct. They try to move themselves out instead of dying, and that they actually just kind of move out of the participatory pathways and don't contribute to the function of the end organ they're involved with. But you
could call them veggie cells because they're like in a vegetative Netflix and chill cells.
Yeah, they consume resources. They consume resources, but they don't participate in function. And actually, they not only do they...
I know a few people that are like that.
Right? Right? And so they don't contribute to the function. They consume resources, and worse, they send out messages via their exosomes, they create the exosomes that send out messages to the functioning cells, the ones that are there working, the good worker cells, and invite them over and say, hey, come on over here. You don't have to work anymore and you get all the resources.
It's like having a bad apple in your work environment.
Exactly. So that being said, that process is a circular process and gets worse and worse and worse, and actually contributes to the rapidity of aging. It really hasn't been all that long that the science was created to be able to actually measure how fast our bodies are aging. The initial ideas came out of Russia in the early 60s, but were never really followed up on, about the kind of the shutdown of the DNA and that the kind of biological clocks that have been looked into historically, and more recently over the last 5 or 10 years, the science has come to the point where we now have a test that actually can measure the biological shutdown of our DNA, which is correlated linearly with the aging process. And so there are a number of those tests out now, and those tests actually allow us to objectively look at the response that a certain medical or supplement or whatever intervention that we're entertaining with the patient can actually look at whether or not it slows or can reverse that shutdown of the DNA, progressive shutdown of the DNA. And in actuality, we're using one that's on its 3rd generation now, and probably the best one out there. But it is really interesting to see the results of just our optimization program.
And that's the 4 pillars.
Right. The 4-pillar program has provided, on an average at this juncture, an average age reversal. So not unlike myself, start with let's say they're 60 years old when they start, but they have an average age reversal of 9 years right now in my hands and with our program. So it's fascinating to see that I personally, being non-compliant with my own program, have had such a good response, quite frankly. But
imagine what you can do when you start doing everything you tell everybody else to do.
Yes, which I started 2 weeks ago.
And that goes for me too. My daughter, Laura, fussed at me recently. You're having too much fun. You need to stop doing all those things that you're doing, which is, I think for me, I like the cocktails. I'm having to give up that. And I was drinking Diet Coke fairly regularly, justifying it because it had no calories. But she got me doing Whole30. And so when I went on Whole30, I got off a Diet Coke. And so now I have a new problem, which is called Pellegrino.
Right.
Which wouldn't be a problem if it wasn't so expensive. So if Pellegrino would like to sponsor Your Infinite Health or send me some cases, that would be great. I would not complain at all. My point was, she was on me for not being as compliant as I should be, also because she doesn't know when she's going to have kids and she wants me around for that. So if that doesn't motivate... Totally self-serving, right? If that doesn't motivate a person to get their act together, I don't know what is. So
right.
Be curious. And since you're 53... I got to back my...
No, I'm going back to when we met.
Younger than me. That was just the universe will collapse if that happens.
I'm going back to 42. That's where I'm going.
You're going to 32?
No, 42 I think would be reasonable.
How old you were when we met. So that would be okay. But you can't go back. And that's only if I go back. That means I have to go back to 25. 24. I was 25. Oh no. We're in a race. Listener, we're in a race to make sure that I stay 17 years younger than him. So
there you go.
And actually, I think this guy just showed up at the office right as we were walking out. And I feel really bad because he just showed up. He didn't have an appointment or anything. And he's like, I want an age reversal kit. And I just so happen to have one. I don't keep them in stock because they're expensive. So I order them after somebody pays for them.
I think expense is relative here because I think the information garnered by that, the results of that test are...
That's true. I mean, it is highly valuable information because it helps show a person where you are. And you could, like that one guy, he was 41, but his cells were coming in at 58?
58, almost 59.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
it was amazing. Yeah.
So that motivated him.
Lawyer.
Yeah. Motivated him to do what he needed to do. And when he got retested 12 months later, he was
44, I think.
so almost back to where he should be.
Yeah,
and
he was 42 at the time. So you take into account the year that he was on the program, plus the 14 years or 15 years he age reversed. And so that's 15 or 16 years that he reversed his age and his health overall in that time. And it's evident. I mean, that
I need to get him on this podcast as well.
3 to 4 months, he was bouncing off the walls. He's expanded his business into 3 or 4 new offices and doing all sorts of things.
I know we talk about him a lot because he's amazing. He's done the do and was compliant
with everything.
But this guy showed up unexpected, unannounced, wanting that age kit. And I was like, oh, I just happen to have one, which is cool because he was a non-patient. And so I'm like, well, you have to come back because we have to go over your results. So anyway, listener, I guess my point with that story is you don't have to be a patient. We can send you the kit. It's just a little blood test. You can handle it. You're an adult. You just send it in, and then it takes a little while for those results to come back in, but you get a view of your results. But then we, as the physician ordering the test, get an expanded view, more information than what they send the actual patient. And so from that information, you actually can see how old you really are. And you should not be afraid of that information. It's information that can help you make smarter choices for yourself and your family. And then what we can do from there is we can add our own labs to that and create a program for you to actually age in reverse.
Where we get a little music come in and we go off and we do the sponsored by announcements.
Sponsored by ourselves at this juncture. This episode is sponsored by Infinite Health Integrative Medicine Center. For more information, please go to yourinfinitehealth.com. Okay, I'm sorry. That was me being silly. Anyway, I hope, guys, you found this valuable, entertaining, and informative. We're about out of time, so until next time.
Thanks for subscribing to Your Infinite Health. I'm Dr. Tripp.
And I'm LeNae. Until next time, feel it, look it, and live it.